you usually, Caolan, confronting some people who are spreading Russian propaganda. And this time, it was not like just a Phidias. It was quite a figure, I would say. It was a Steve Witkoff, that's a U.S. envoy in this peace negotiation process between Ukraine and Russia. And you confronted him in Davos after the Ukrainian breakfast organized by Viktor Pinchuk. And you were there alone, standing and asking him questions. How did you manage actually to confront him? And he didn't say you anything in response. What did that tell you?
Well, this was a really unusual situation. I'd been invited to this breakfast, which is a very closed event. I was really surprised. I was sitting in this room. The Prime Minister of Belgium was there. He was spewing his nonsense about not releasing Russian assets. And talk of the devil, Steve Witkoff, walks into the room, unexpected. He gives a speech about how he's going to go to Moscow that evening, about how he's going to shake hands with Putin that night, and finally secure a peace deal. His 7th visit to Moscow, by the way, 0 to Kyiv. And I was sitting there and I was watching him and I was wondering why on earth none of the politicians in that room had ever said a thing to him. And that morning at 7 a.m., Steve had gone to Bloomberg House and he had gone to other journalist headquarters and he had given flattering interviews, and the interviewers were saying how great he was and how great his negotiations were. There wasn't a single mention of the fact that this person, Steve Witkoff, who is in charge of negotiations of peace between America, Ukraine and Russia, has business interests proven in his real estate company with Moscow and with Moscow-linked companies. So he has very, very, very likely financial interests in Russia while negotiating peace, which is completely unacceptable and means that he should be nowhere near any seat of diplomacy or power. Yet, he was in that room unquestioned by the journalists. So, as soon as he stood up to leave, him and Kellyanne Conway, I ran out the back door and chased after them and I said, why do you have business interests in Russia? Do you have business interests in Russia? His team pushed me away. His bodyguard was like, we're not doing questions right now. We're not talking to you. And I said, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to Steve. Why do you have financial interests in Russia? And all he had to do was say, I don't have financial interests. All he had to do was say no. All he had to do was say that I was being ridiculous, or just to say that he doesn't.
But there was silence.
But it was silence. And that tells everything. That tells you everything you need to know. And that night, he boarded a private jet and went straight to Moscow and shook Putin's hand hours after I confronted him. And I also said, why have you visited Moscow a million times and never visited Kyiv? And again, I was shocked that I was the only person that asked him these questions, because the point of journalism at a place like Davos is to confront power, is to confront corruption, is to tell the truth. And not a single journalist of the thousands that were paid tens of thousands to be at Davos asked a single question like that. And that's what I thought was absolutely ridiculous. And yeah, I might not get an invite next year to any of these parties, to any of these events, but I don't want an invite next year. I wanted to confront the people that are perpetuating what's going on right now and ask the difficult questions. And again, it feels like journalism is dead in so many ways. It feels like it's over. I mean, I love people like Fareed, Simon from Vice, who's very, very, very great. But that very thing that is the core of what journalism is seems to be dying right now. And that's asking the hard questions. No one wants to do it. Sergei Lavrov, Russia's mouthpiece, was on NBC recently while he repeated the fact that Russians are not targeting civilian areas in Ukraine, are not targeting civilians. So it feels like the media is broken. The reason that video went so viral is because it was the only video of anyone being confronted at Davos like that. But yeah, I'm glad that I asked those questions. This person is corrupt, I think, and has financial interests in Russia. I was told by other journalists that night, similar types of things. So yeah, but it was very dramatic. I went back to the hotel afterwards to get my coat and my bag, and they were like, you're not allowed back in here. Because it's all very polite at Davos, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It's all very polite. Everyone has to be nice to each other. Everyone has to go to the same party that night and have cocktails and pretend like nothing is wrong.
There is no war and no people are not dying. Yes.
Yeah, but right now Europe's at war. Russia is a hostile enemy and it's a war with all of us right now. And someone needs to talk about it and confront it. And the party's over. And it went over a long time ago. So that's what happened. It was kind of dramatic, but they were even shocked. Like his team were shocked that I kept chasing after them and confronting them. Because it's like, They didn't expect it, because why would they? Because this never happens. It doesn't happen at the White House press conferences. It doesn't happen when Steve appears anywhere. Yeah.
Caolan, do you know how we call in Ukraine Steve Witkoff? That he is not a U.S. envoy, but a Kremlin's envoy.
Do you know what he did? He, literally the next day, he went straight up to Putin's translator and said, "Oh, I know that voice better than anyone's. That's my favorite voice." Did you hear this?
No.
Yeah, he said it to Putin's translator, not his translator, and said that it's his favorite voice. He knows it from anywhere. There's a video of this. But I'm glad that he said that, because it is. His favorite voice are the Russians that are paying him.
Which is proving he's not a diplomat. He's not even someone who can speak from the United States. He's a businessman.
Yeah, but that's what Trump wants, right? Trump is a real estate wheeler and dealer.
Yeah.
And Steve Witkoff has a reputation. They worked together, him and Trump, in the 90s. And he was like at the lower end of real estate. He was doing like the shady deals. He was always a bit of a... but Trump likes that. He likes people that are like 1 foot in criminality, 1 foot in corruption, 1 foot in his barrel. And he sees this war as a business deal. He sees it as something that can be, I can convince Putin to give up some territory. I can give up Russia. I can give up Ukraine, and Russia to give up X, Y, and Z. Like it's buying property. And it's the reason that Steve Witkoff is in charge of what he's in charge of is because Trump, who put him there, sees this as a business opportunity and a real estate deal when it's a land invasion and a war.
Caolan, you said about Sergei Lavrov on NBC News, right? If you had a chance to ask a few questions, what would you ask him?
I would take out my phone and I would show him videos of civilians that are being murdered in Kherson, that are walking, like Lady Laura, who is walking.
He's going to tell you it's a fake. I met Lavrov. That's his attitude.
Yeah, well, I would tell him that I've seen this with my own eyes. My friends have been killed with the missiles that you and your friends launched into this country, and you should be arrested and thrown in prison. And I mean, I don't really know what he could say this. I've seen the Russian war crimes with my own eyes that he's done. I've seen people murdered in places like Kherson right in front of me from Russian drones and Russian missiles that he covers up. And I would ask him how he sleeps at night doing PR and press for a government that does that. Although I know the answer is because he's Russian and he doesn't care about human life.
From Davos, you went to Kherson straight away, and you're reporting on the situation in Kherson for a long time. So how all the situation have changed there regarding Russian resources, regarding the tactic and this drone safari when they're just hunting civilians and killing them and filming them on camera?
Well, it's become more brutal in Kherson. And the reason I went straight there from Davos is because there aren't enough reporters there. It's very hard to get there. It's extremely difficult. But people need to know that the drone attacks have increased, the attacks on energy have increased, and people are still being murdered every single day in that city. So the resources that the Russians have seems to have decreased, because when they tried to take Pokrovsk, they moved a lot of their stuff from the north and the south, or from Kherson, from Kharkiv direction. But they're now using more makeshift drones that are made with like plywood, polystyrene. Some of these have been downed over Kherson. There's pictures of this that the local government have put out. But they are continuing to hit civilians anywhere near the river because their tactic right now is to make that city completely unlivable. I have been visiting Kherson since its liberation, since early 2023, and I remember that city just full of jubilation. Everyone was celebrating right outside the state administrative building, which is now completely destroyed. And every single time I go back, slowly it gets turned more and more to dust. Areas I went to where I had previously been that now have no power, no electricity, no gas, and now no rescue workers because it's become so dangerous. And the Russians are at a point of desperation where they know they can't take Kherson. They try these amphibious assaults every single night. It's not working. And so they just want to completely destroy everything that moves. And this was my most, honestly, I mean, I'm talking about it now for the first time, but this trip that I've just come back from was the most dangerous thing I have ever done in my life. I ended up going with the drone hunters that actually go to Antonivka and shoot these drones out of the sky. Normally, journalists run and hide from drones, but the point of these guys is to find them and shoot them as they come across the river before they get to the city. And it's the first time I've seen a drone shot down right in front of me. It's the first time I've seen drones go right overhead multiple times in an hour. And we entered a part of the city just across the railroad where it was like an apocalyptic video game where everything was gone, all the cars were upside down. They told me once we passed this certain line, police, fire, ambulance, rescue workers will not go beyond this point. It is no man's land. There is nothing here. There's no laws. There's nothing. There's no civilians. And it was like entering the apocalypse. I had never seen anything like this. Everything was completely destroyed. Every apartment had been burned, hit by drones. And it was insane. When they started shooting at the drone and blowing it up, I ran inside a basement. But I don't know how these guys take this risk every single day. But what's crazy about it as well is that Ukrainians, there's no defense really to this. You know, they can put nets up in the streets. They can put physical boundaries to try and stop the drones hitting civilians. But the backup to that is to use rifles and old school guns to shoot these things out of the sky. The drones that we saw were fiber optic cables. They couldn't even be picked up in the jammers. Electronic warfare doesn't work. And so you've got to resort to just shooting them out of the sky like a cowboy style. It's absolutely unbelievable